You're listening to a Meatsmith Harvest. This is the podcast that encourages and equips you to grow your home around the harvest. Welcome, Meatsmiths. This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2.
Yeah, and it has been fun to have some leaner meats to work with. We've been cooking the beef that is now over 90 days aging in my refrigerator here and getting all kinds of glorious blooms of mold, but it's just dry enough to keep it from spoiling, and it's just getting better and better. And actually, I was going to mention Kurt he's one of our members, and he mentioned a good question. Speaking of fat, he said he's talking about silver fox rabbits.
Oh,
And, rabbits are one of those things that are super lean.
That's right.
They don't have fat.
Yeah.
Like almost none, very tiny amounts. And you kind of need fat. And I remember when we had rabbits, or if you're eating beef, it's okay to just we have lost this art of imbuing foods with fat.
Yeah.
It's totally okay. And there's 2 ways to use massive amounts of fat. And those of you who raise lard pigs might find this beneficial, especially when you're slaughtering your own, like American guinea hogs or coonies. Save or cure or freeze all that back fat and use that as barding or larding, and render a lot of fat. You can see we've got a bunch of it. That's the fruit of that leaf fat behind us in deli containers, is the fruit of 2 coony looking pigs. So that is almost 2.5 gallons of fat back there.
From 2 coonies.
2 coonies.
Wow.
And that's just the leaf lard.
That's
the purest of the pure fat. It doesn't even have a savory flavor. So if you have a ton of that, the other way you can use it for the preparation of lean meats is confit, which means you submerge meat in fat completely and simmer it for a while. Cook it completely submerged. And it has to be completely submerged. And to do that, you need lots of fat. You need a fat pig in your backyard. And that is how we've been eating this beef. But I was actually going to answer Kurt's question. He said he's heard that silver foxes actually produce fat. And so he drank the Kool-Aid and got 3 of them. You will soon have many more. I don't know. I don't know if they have fat. Actually, I think they do have some deposits. I've seen actual little white deposits of fat on silver foxes and on, what are the big ones? Flemish giants. But here's the thing, Kurt, about the silver foxes. They are difficult to skin. And I don't know why that is. At least the ones that I did, it was actually a pain. And skinning rabbits should not be a pain. It should be like wet sock off, right? You just pull it off. But for some reason, them silver foxes, that was a challenge. It was so much tugging that it would start to rip the carcass. So Kurt's a member. So maybe if you slaughter some of those guys, let us know how the skinning goes. That's my only...
Did you have to use a knife the whole way, or did you just sort of power through it?
I can't remember, but I think I went through both, trying not to tear the meat but still trying to get it off efficiently. So let us know how the skinning goes, Kurt. I would be curious to know about that. But those lean rabbits, even if they do have fat, it's just going to be a little bit. And confit is an excellent way to eat rabbit.
Yeah, we've wrapped rabbits in caul fat before.
Oh yeah, and that is what the pig gives you, is lube for everything. It's lubricant, it's fat for all the things in every form. It gives it to you in a veil that's beautiful in the caul fat. And that is nice because it can be wrapped around anything. And then it gives you sheets of back fat that you can slice thin and then wrap around things. That's barding. But the back fat can also be cut into noodles and injected inside the meat, inside like a beef roast, because that is how flexible. And then the pig gives you lard, so as you can cook lean meat completely submerged in lard. So go do these things.
I know.
And you need a fat pig to do it.
Yeah.
That's how we've been doing the beef. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
The crazy thing about this beef is that I thought that I was going to have to cure most of it. I was ready to do that because I was determined not to freeze any of it, which I think we talked about last time. That was the goal, non-freezy. We're not freezing this beef at all. And so I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to have to cure it. I'm going to have to salt it, brine it, and smoke it. And that is not the case. In fact, the thing that it has been the trickiest to utilize in the kitchen culinarily is the small amount of stuff that I did cure.
That's true.
It's brined, it's delicious, and it's smoked. It's the plate and some of the flank. But the stuff that has been the easiest and the most readily accessible is just the fresh beef that's been hanging forever. So I think the key to not freezing beef is don't cure it, just hang it. Do nothing. Just leave it alone. Maybe put a fan on it and keep it dehumidified in a cool, wet, dry place, like a walk-in. Or if you live far enough north, that's just winter. And discipline yourself to go through it before that starts getting warm. But you can get all kinds of crazy mold on there, and it's no problem. And so the crazy thing about it is that all of the magic that curing does for pork, simply hanging does for beef. So it doesn't spoil. So there's that end met, right? It is essentially preserved. If it's dry and cool enough, the beef will not rot. It will go good, but it won't go bad. It will rot, but without bacteria creating pathogens. It will be breaking down enzymatically and decomposing in a delicious fashion, but not rotting. And then the other thing is, it will become tender.
That's right.
This has probably been, I mean, apart from the flavor, which has just been mind-blowing. Even the mold on the outside, by the way, if you choose to leave some of it on, it tastes like blue cheese. It makes the cheesiest steak. It's amazing. Or you could skim it off if you want a more mild flavor. But the crazy thing is that even the tough parts are tender now. So at plus 90 days, we roasted, and we also put a bunch of fat on it, the bottom round. And if there is any part of the cow that is prone to dryness and toughness, it is the bottom round. You can kind of get away with the top round a little bit. That's the inside of the back leg of a pig, a cow, well, and a pig, I guess. But we're talking about a cow. And then the outside is the bottom round. And that is a tougher muscle. It's used a little more to do a little more heavy lifting. It is super lean. It has no fat in it, and it's used all the time by the cow. Prime example of a piece of meat that no matter how you cook it, it's going to be chewy and dry. That's the bottom round. But that is only a bottom round that is not aged and that is not cooked in salubrious amounts, or what should I say? I've lost all of my similes for bigness. In a lot of fat. So that's the key. This is what we did with this thing. I cut the whole bottom round off, which is a big piece of meat. It's huge. I did just skim off with my knife the very moldy exterior. And then I cut several sheets of smoked and cured back fat that I had. And then with what was left of that slab, I put my larding needle in there and then injected the meat with noodles of fat, which is larding. And then I tied the back fat on the outside, which is barding. And then I cut it in half and I put it in a pot where it just barely fit. And then I added more fat in the shape of ham in this really cool thing that I read about in Escoffier called Matignon. which is probably also not how you say that, but we can pretend. It's like Matignon, maybe.
Oh.
But it's like mirepoix with ham.
Oh. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So it's carrots, onions, celery, and diced raw ham, which we happen to have a lot of. So I diced those 3 vegetables plus the ham up, put it in this tight-fitting pot, poured in about half a bottle of wine, and again, surrounded in lard, put the lid on, and we just roasted it for, I don't even know, it's a couple hours in a 300-degree oven. And
this was a Sunday roast.
This was a Sunday roast.
I mean, we're getting into it. Like the last 3 Sundays, you've tried to do something really special.
Feast on Sundays.
And then also there's been so many leftovers too out of that because they're so massive.
Yeah, a whole bottom round is humongous. It was huge.
It really
Tied
was.
Up. Yeah.
Like 20 inches long or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I had to cut it down to fit in the pot. So it had, even if you do that with a fresh bottom of round, it's not going to be terrible, but it will be a little dry and chewy because it is so lean. But this one was so aged.
Yeah.
It was tender. It was actually tender. And this is not a small thing because while the bottom round does tend towards toughness and dryness, in any other situation, it is one of the most flavorful pieces of muscle tissue on the cow.
Oh, okay.
It is so flavorful. Just the pure flavor of it is absolutely delicious. And if I were to make up a reason, it would be because it's used so frequently. It's got lots of capillaries. It's bloody. It's a bloody piece.
Okay.
And that blood just tends to run out, when you cook it, and that's why it gets dry. But it is so, that's why my favorite way to eat bottom round historically has been completely raw.
Okay.
Just slice it thin, and a little bit of olive oil and salt, flaky salt. It is, just eat it completely raw. It is so delicious that way. That is probably still one of my favorite ways. But when it is dry aged this much, the dry aging also makes it more juicy, even though it is drying, even though it's losing water. That's the crazy thing.
I know.
The longer you age it, the more juicy it will be. And this is because it's enhancing its water holding capacity as it breaks down. So what little liquid there is left in the meat, it's actually holding on to it.
Got it.
It doesn't...
When it's cooking.
Yeah. It doesn't run out of it. And so when I opened the lid to this thing, this little pot roast of beef, literally roasted in a pot, it was basically submerged in the lard from all the back fat that I put in there.
That's right.
So it's kind of confit for part of it. And it was just crazy delicious. It was so good. We let it rest and then sliced it up. And even my young children could chew bottom round.
That's right.
Lean bottom round.
Like our 2-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, our 1 years old.
That's what she's not quite 2.
Yeah, not yet.
I think of her as 2.
She's running around and acting like it. But Therese could eat it, no problem.
That's right. With all 8 of her teeth.
Yeah.
Is there a name for that scientifically, what you just described, the water holding capacity? What is it the muscles are doing?
I have to review a textbook, but if I were to try to piece it together from memory, it is the water binding capacity of the meat. So you get a similar effect when you mix meat.
Like sausage.
Yeah. So like beef has quite a high capacity for holding water.
That's
particularly bull meat has the highest. The flesh of a bull can bind its weight in water. So if you mix 20 pounds of beef, or if you grind 20 pounds of bull meat, you can dump 20 pounds of water in it, and as you mix it, it will suck it all up, and there will be none standing in the tub.
Yeah.
So that is the ability that somehow by breaking down the proteins through this enzyme called myosin,
right,
which is also part of the system in the living animal that helps muscles contract, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's a 2-part thing. It's like myosin and actin or something.
Okay.
But I'm starting to forget these things.
Yeah.
Medical people could fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And somehow the myosin helps it break down. And for some reason, when the proteins break down, when they, if they're chains of molecules, I don't know if they are, as they break down, they can hold more water.
So it's kind of like aging achieves what sausage making is trying to go for.
Aging of beef is...
Yeah, well, because when you mix sausage,
yes, right, yeah.
you're creating that myosin conversion and sucking up all of the wine or the fat that you've put in with the lean.
Yes. And I think as you're aging the beef, enzymes are breaking down the proteins, just like the myosin reaction as you're mixing breaks down proteins and enhances its water holding capacity. Mm-hmm. That's happening in aging beef. It is breaking down. People mimic this by adding phosphates.
Oh, okay.
And phosphates don't work as well because it's a cheat. And as I understand it, phosphates literally shred the meat on a microscopic level. They shred the proteins. Oh. This actually answers a question, it's kind of circuitous, but not really, that we had on the Meatsmith table about someone was having a problem with their brine penetrating all the way to the center of the ham. Which is that is a water binding issue with the ham because the brine is liquid. And you want it to get all the way to the center. And that is the primary challenge of making a ham. That is the perennial challenge.
Okay.
And one thing they would do that they cheat with today is adding phosphates. And that enhances the penetration you get from the brine. And they even... this is so... I am going to keep it related to the end. But even when they make sausage... the degree of phosphate in the animal's flesh starts to decline or convert or reduce to something else after the animal is killed. And so when we met that German butcher one time, he said, we make our emulsified sausage when the meat is still warm.
That's right.
Because there's the highest level of intact phosphate or something in the meat. So while it's still warm with body heat, we are grinding it and emulsifying it to make our German sausage. Because it will hold. A sausage that has successfully been suspended the proteins and bound all the liquid and water will not shrink upon cooking. It will just stay plump and juicy to the mouth.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. So I think that is happening. The beef is actually retaining more of what little moisture remains. Yeah. And with regard to the ham, one thing they would do to enhance its brine holding capacity is tumble it.
Tumble it?
Yes.
What's that mean?
So they do it now in a cheaty way. They have this huge thing that's like a front-loading clothes dryer.
Okay.
But it's like the size of this building. And they load it with hams and then they suck all the oxygen out of it. They suck all the air out. They create a vacuum. And then they tumble the hams. They tumble them with the brine. And you can make ham immediately that way. So it impregnate the cure because there's 0 atmospheric pressure in there somehow, and because there's phosphate in the brine, and because the tumbling actually helps break down the proteins. Right. You get a better penetration of the brine and quicker.
That's wild. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and it actually, I don't know how true this is. It sounds a little folklore-y, but whatever. I like it. It's from this guy, the excellent Maynard Davies. This book is very hard to find these days because he doesn't want to redo his measurements for the domestic kitchen. He's a stubborn old coot. And so he says that comes from, they found that when you were shipping hams on tall ships in barrels, and they were rolling around in the hold of the ship, they had better penetration.
Oh, interesting.
And so it actually became intentional. They would roll hams in barrels to tumble them to get better penetration, because that is difficult.
Yeah.
For me to get penetration, brine equalization throughout the entire ham and penetration, I do smaller hams that
That's right.
I have removed the bone from, and along a seam. I think I kind of cut them like, some people would cut a culatello. It's really the back part of the bottom round and the top round, minus the sirloin tip, basically, minus the knuckle, minus the meat that's just above the patella, the kneecap. That section of boneless ham is relatively small, and I brine them, and then I overhaul the brine, hopefully a couple times, just to make sure that the meat is in every part of the meat is in full contact with brine,
right,
and not just resting against the side of the tub.
Right.
Then I smoke them after the brine, and then I hang them for a while. And that is the most essential. It's just time. Like if you think about a prosciutto, the ultimate example, it's hanging for 2 years. The salt will get all the way in eventually. It will be salty all the way to the center of the bone. It's just a time thing of the salt chasing water all the way to the center of the bone. And that will happen. You just got to hang. You got to hang the hams. And I've found I need to hang mine for a couple weeks to get satisfactory penetration.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was kind of circuitous.
That's okay.
We're talking about beef and binding water. And
yeah.
Why is it so dry and juicy at the same time?
Yeah. And what's happening to the meat that makes it hold onto its moisture in the cooking process.
And I'm sure I'm missing some gaps in there, but I do know that it works.
Yeah, experientially. That's
so
just what
do it.
Yeah.
Hang the beef forever.
Yeah.
And then roast it with lots of fat. And then eat the fat that you roast it with the beef.
So you just described the most recent roast we did.
Yeah.
And that was the round.
Yes, the bottom round.
Okay.
Tough, lean.
A couple weekends ago, you did a different kind of a roast.
Yeah.
That happened just after we recorded the last podcast on beef.
Okay.
Do you remember what that was? That was the bacon lattice one.
Oh, yes, that was the chuck.
Was that a different kind of process, or was it pretty much the same?
That is the beauty of this. It's pretty much the same.
Okay.
People would say it's different because it's, there's different cuts you make on the butchery end.
Right, yeah.
But, you don't need to get hung up with that. When you're dry aging beef, just cut off huge hunks.
Okay.
Roll them up. And then completely enwrap them in fat.
Okay, that was that was a different question.
It will be stupid, and let it age for a long time. This is one of those things where it's like cooking has become needlessly complex because we don't have quality animals that are harvested well. And the butcher takes off all the flavor and all the moisture when he trims them and removes all the fat. Therefore, cooking is difficult, and you have lots of recipes, and you're just constantly running into dry, flavorless, bland meat. It's the same thing. If you kill the pig well, if it's been raised well and fed well and it has not been excessively trimmed, you can cook it very simply. You can even cook it a little poorly, and it will be super delicious. So it's these preliminary steps that are the most important element to the recipe for that dinner roast. It's the husbandry and the harvest. And for beef, what that means is the two things that we're not allowed to do with beef anymore, which is let them live a lot longer. There's no such thing. I have not encountered a beef that is too old to eat. I've eaten an 11-year-old cow, and it was some of the most flavorful beef I've ever had in my life. So let it live longer. We're harvesting them all too young. And then age it indefinitely. Literally, we're at 100 days at least right now for the beef that's hanging in my walk-in.
Yeah.
And when you do those two things, you've combated those elements which result in all of the trickiness of cooking beef. It takes out all the challenges of beef cookery. The challenges that you're dodging with fancy recipes, like toughness and leanness. Those are the two things that are challenging with beef cookery, particularly from muscles from the back leg. If you can have a nice old cow or steer and you can age it for a long time, those challenges are completely taken care of. And then all you have to do is wrap it in a ton of fat and cook it for a while, and it will be crazy delicious.
How many people do you know you would say truly share your back to the land values? Or your passion for home-scale craft meat curing? Or simply love the multifaceted beauty of a good meal as obsessively as you do? Maybe a handful? At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created an online community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world and a platform for them to learn from and inspire one another. In addition to our major semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Pacific Northwest homestead, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources years deep now, for you to dive deeper into your food journey with. And both our classes and online program include access to our private community Facebook page for your continued education and fellowship. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you, putting the knife in your hand, article by article, and comment thread by comment thread, and can support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
So that was a chuck that we had. And that one, I took out the shoulder blade. So the chuck is also challenging because it's laced with connective tissue, with fascia, with ligaments. Well, I should say with tendons and silver skins, right? Because it's several muscles all bunched together. At least the bottom round is one big or two relatively homogeneous muscles without a lot of silver skin. I mean, there is one sheet. That's why in Britain they call it the silver side. But you can remove that pretty easily. With the chuck, it's interwoven with lots of connective tissue. So, and I wanted to roast this thing dry. And I was pretty sure, well, you know, we might have some chewy spots, but we'll just do it anyway. And so I did the pretty lattice with bacon. That might have been all the fat I put on it. I don't think I did anything else.
I don't know if you...
Tied that on there. And then we just roasted it dry. So this was not in a pot with a lid.
That's right. I remember when you were preparing it, you were a little nervous just because conventionally this was very unconventional.
Very chewy cut. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were like, well, it's an experiment.
Yeah.
And we were shocked.
It was super tender.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And that one was the one where we're like, even Therese is eating this.
Yeah.
You know, and she's just sending it right. I mean, she was able to chew it, and she just kept eating it.
And again, that's because it's aged. So this, in a way, this is kind of this kind of beef is the easiest to cook.
Yeah.
It's not. It simplifies the whole thing because it is already tender just by virtue of having hanged for so long.
Yeah.
Even the silver skins are tender. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, people. Even the tough parts are tender. The membranes are tender.
Yeah.
When it's hung for 90 plus days.
Yeah.
And it was super good. And then it's really worked for the economy of our household to roast a 20-inch piece of beef and then eat as much as we can, and then we put it in the fridge, and we have wonderful sandwich meat, or you just made a shepherd's pie with a bunch of diced beef that was already cooked. I'll just slice off thickish slices and just fry them up again, just to brown them or warm them up, and then serve that with breakfast, almost like a ham.
Right.
Again, it's dry-aged beef is like cured pork in terms of its flexibility and the effect that the aging has on the meat. It's tender and juicy, just like a ham is tender and juicy as a result of being brined. It's just in a cow, it's a result of simply hanging out, being aged.
That's why roast beef has become a sandwich meat, right?
Yeah.
You know, you just slice it off thinly.
So good.
Yeah. It has been nice to have it, though, in the winter. I mean, because the key component for us doing this is having the walk-in. And so it's kind of mimicking like what Pa did in the Laura Ingalls Wilder series where he'd go out and get a deer and then just hang it in his barn all winter, and they'd eat off of it. And eat off of it.
Yeah. So, we don't sit on what we eat.
We don't eat on things. I know. And so I was thinking about that as you were just talking. Some of our northern American listeners, people in Canada or Minnesota,
we're still pretty balmy down here.
They can do that kind of thing, and with a pretty rudimentary setup, I would guess. Yeah. They might not need a walk-in. No, is what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know. I think like the southern listeners, they might have to get a walk-in to do this. But it would be no different than like what we've done with the salami. Like if you want salami, you get yourself a Little Italy. Yeah. But I think it's a way to use the technology that's available. Yeah. That ends up serving you, 20-fold. Yeah. Because so we've done roasts. Lots of. What are some of the conventional cut names that we have gotten from the beef, like from the back end, let's say? From, you mentioned round, the bottom and top round, like chuck. What are some of the other, if people recognize these in the grocery store, what would they see? The names that we've ended up barding and larding and, but essentially treating the same way. Is it just the entire back leg?
I mean, we have done everything as roasts, and you generally don't see any roasts in the grocery store.
Right. That is true.
I mean, we don't really ever purchase anything from that section, but it's usually all little steaky things. Yeah. They try to turn the entire carcass into little steaky things. And ground whether beef. Or not they're tender. Yeah. And ground beef, yeah. Yeah. Because they're not getting whole carcasses. They're getting boxed primals that are boneless already from the slaughterhouse, usually, from a distributor.
And that's easy for people to cook.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, there is no analog to grocery store.
That's true.
To what we're doing. Yeah. Not even close. I mean, I don't even know butcher shops.
Okay. Well, it seems like whenever you talk to someone who is maybe in the industry, they're using different words anyway for...
It's true.
Well, what do you mean by the round? Because I mean it with including this muscle. Or I don't. I
call that the London broil. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then, or even if you talk to a British person, like, forget it. You're not going to mean the same thing. Yeah. Almost at all.
It is. I like the British beef butchery has engraved in it the idea of roasting beef. That's why they're the roast beefs.
That's right.
But like London broil is the bottom round.
Okay.
They've been broiling that. Because they are big on aging their beef.
Because they age, yeah.
Yeah. You can actually broil that thing. Yeah. You can roast it if it's aged long enough.
That makes sense.
And through their genetics, they've really focused on tender, flavorful cows. Yeah. Slow maturing, just crazy good. Yeah.
We did do a few steaks.
We did actually do some steaks.
What were they from?
We did T-bones. And I think we mentioned those. Those are the ones that I left the moldy exterior on. And they were the ones where Johnny was like, this tastes like blue cheese.
That's right, yeah. But like just last weekend, we did you call them flat irons?
That was actually a good one, yes. So I did take the shoulder blade out of the chuck roast that we had already mentioned. But nestled against the shoulder blade is the flat iron. And that is actually tender on a non-aged cow. That's a tender piece. It's just this hidden little secret muscle on top of the shoulder blade in a beef cow. It's pretty cool. It's got a big piece of fascia running through the middle of it that's very not tender. And so you kind of skim it, you fillet it like a fish and get that central tendon out of there, and then you can pan fry it, and it is just extremely tender. So that one was super delicious. It's pretty much as tender as the tenderloin, but way more flavorful. Okay. And that'll work even on a beef that is not aged. But then there are these other little muscles that surround the shoulder blade, that tend to just be tossed into the ground. And one of them is called the mock tender. because, or it's probably got 30 names, but the mock tender, and it is on the other side of the little quicksilver wave on a shoulder blade, other side from opposite the flat iron. Mm-hmm. There's a little quicksilver wave and a shoulder blade, and there's the mock tender and then the flat iron on the other side. And that mock tender is a mockery of tenderness. Oh. Because it's tubular in shape. So you can, I don't know, maybe this is my assumption as to why it's called that. You could almost sell it as a tenderloin, but it is super not tender. It's a tough little guy. Because it's in the shoulder. It's part of moving that whole front arm assembly. Very tough.
Does it look like a copa? Like on a pig?
No, it's just a little, it looks like more like a pork tenderloin. In terms of size and shape. It's just a little tube that peters. Yeah. And so that one was a good test. And it also has a little bit of fascia that runs through the center of it. Notoriously tough and chewy and dry. But this one was 95 days old or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I sliced it into medallions just like you would a fillet, and just fried it hot and fast. And again, our 1-year-old, no problem. She could just take bites out of it. Yeah. It was super tender. Yeah. Because it was almost 100 days old at that point. Probably was. It's the miracle. Aging beef is miraculous. Yeah. The enzymes break it down for you. Yeah. It's pre-digested. Yeah. Sort of like in the wind right now. I'm thinking of our 120-foot tall fir trees.
Yeah. You can hear it.
We burn fir for firewood, and so technically I should be felling fir trees, right? But I think I've felled just 3 or 4 since we've lived here because we have self-felling trees. They fell themselves. Yeah. They just fall down in the wind. Fortunately, not on our house or shop. Yeah. And beef it's self-digesting. It will break itself down.
If you let it.
If you let it.
Yeah.
And then it's tender. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's another example of that docility to the harvest, letting something do what it will naturally do.
Yeah. Just guide it with a little bit of dry air. It's got to be dry. Yeah. That's the key. It will spoil if it's too humid. Unfortunately, you'll know. Yeah. You'll get some cat hair molds. And we talked last time about the order of business when it comes to aging a beef for a long time, what pieces to cut off first, because those are the most likely to trap moisture and cause spoilage. So that's in the last episode. But that one element of dryness is the key. And this actually kind of works with pork, I should say. We've got a pig that's been hanging in there in my walk-in since the beginning of December. We are at the beginning of February.
That's true, I know.
And it's fine because my walk-in is dry. So even pork will do this technically, and it tastes amazing. It's super delicious. We might get some molds on the outside. No slime. See, slime is the thing that ticks you off to. That's your cue that we're not drying anymore. We're putrefying, or we're about to. Exterior slime is just the beginning. That means it's not dry enough. So go away, Siri.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened.
It's just dryness. Yeah. And if the humidity is low enough, and honestly, I can't imagine that dehumidifier gets it any lower than 70% humidity. That's not that dry. Like the shop gets into 60s pretty regularly. Right now it's 95% humidity. But even pork, when it's dry enough, it will just age. It will ripen. Yeah. We need to start ripening our meats. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, so is there anything left on the beef that we have?
The sirloin tip, I believe they call it. It's the knuckle I start to forget the names because they're so irrelevant to me. It's the piece that I'm going to cover in fat and roast. It's that piece. It's it's the part above the patella, right above the kneecap.
Okay.
On the front side of the femur. It's the piece that I remove from the hams that I make.
Okay.
So super tough, actually.
Super. Yeah.
So again, I'm really looking forward to. Yeah. I think it tends to be even tougher than the bottom round. And again, it's laced with fascia. So fortunately, I am surrounded by back fat.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to again wrap it in lard, and we'll roast it. See what happens. It'll be delicious.
I might persuade you to do some
burgers. You wanted some ground. And we did mention that last time, right?
We did.
That was so good.
Which is the same thing, right? But because it wouldn't be we would add maybe some of our guanciale that we're just letting hang here.
Yeah.
Doing nothing. But
grind guanciale in your ground beef.
Yeah, in your 100-day aged ground beef.
It's amazing.
And a guanciale.
Yeah.
We did pho, too. Can I mention that?
Oh, yeah. We did our own little sheared pho.
Yeah. The kids thought they were getting away with something when they said the name. Because, we went on a date recently to Seattle, or Tacoma.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, there's that pho joint over there. Let's go there for lunch. And it was, we discovered a great place.
It was delicious.
And so we came home, and the kids were like, where'd you guys go? They always love hearing where we go when we go on dates. Tell us all about it. And we're like, we went to this place, and this is the kind of food there was. And they couldn't understand the name. They were just like, wait, say it again, Mom. It's like, okay, guys, I'm only going to say this one more time. Anyway, but it was so good. And I thought, actually, they would love this food. So we introduced our kids to our little pho bar. Mm-hmm. I got some really nice ramen noodles. And but the beef broth that we made with all the bones that have been left over from various things, made gallons of it.
Yeah.
And so we made a bunch of pho with it, and the kid, and we even put some of the beef that you cured.
Oh, good. Yeah.
In it, and the kids loved it.
Yeah.
So rich, so
cartilaginous.
Yes.
It was very sweet because of that.
Very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my sister came over one day. She's on this really intense, rigorous diet, and she was like, and I was making the stock from these beef bones, and she's like, what smells so good and what can I not have? And I was like, well, no, it's just broth. And she's like, really? And she couldn't believe that it was such a healthy thing.
I know. It's kind of funny to me that our families are getting way into broth right now.
I know. It's true. Because my sister's into it now.
Yeah.
And
and my parents are seeking health, and
both of our parents are
needing a lot of people are seeking broth for its health stock.
Yeah.
We've been making gallons of it for years.
For a decade.
Every week. Gallons. And for us, it's been like, without broth, I can't do anything in the kitchen. There's nothing to be done.
It's true.
It is the fundamental medium. It's the beginning of so many good things.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can't be enhanced from just tipping in a little bit of rich broth. It's so good. And since, not early, in the days of Escoffier, haute cuisine, French culinary tradition was so tied to sauces. The base of all those sauces were various broths. And I get it. It's the key. It's the sheen on all your vegetables. It is the flavor in the polenta and the risotto.
Yes.
Stop it.
Oh, that's right.
Do some risotto.
Yeah.
Rich broth. It's like, knock your socks off.
Yeah, I know.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah. So that just about covers the...
Whoa, yeah, I gotta wrap some bacon.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any other piece of the beef that we've left out, but...
Yeah. We covered them all last time, too. What we didn't cover today.
Yeah. That's what I mean, yeah. So, check out that other episode that we did 2 episodes ago. I'm trying to think if there's any other little housekeeping things. Oh, I wanted to mention, I haven't mentioned this in a while. I think it's been a running ad on our podcast, but our Patreon members. I wanted to encourage you again to consider, if you've been a loyal listener, first of all, thank you for giving us your time and attention, and I hope this has been helpful. The kids are coming out, so I have to wrap this up. But one thing we're going to do on Patreon is, if I can entice you to become a supporter of this podcast, is become a member of our Patreon account. And we want to add you to our Facebook community, the private closed Facebook community, so that you can, because one thing that the members have been getting are these podcasts literally weeks ahead of when we actually release them.
Right. Live,
exactly. They're listening live, or like it's like logged in Facebook in the feed, and so they it pops up in their feed, and then they can get it.
Yeah.
And then, but it takes us weeks or sometimes a month or two to even. Are you worried about those fir trees?
I know. I'm just thinking about it.
It takes us a while to process them and edit them and get them just so until they're actually up on YouTube. So kind of a neat feature of being a Patreon member, if you're supporting this podcast, is you get it real time.
Yeah.
If you're really into this content.
So to do that, they need to ask me to be members of the Meatsmith table.
That's right.
Facebook, right?
Well, what I think will happen, and we'll work out the kinks, but Victoria is our community manager. And so once you become a Patreon member, then she'll be notified, and then she can give you the link. And so she's aware of who you are, you know, digitally. And then you can tell her if maybe your name is different than your Facebook name or something. You know, she can be up on when you ask to be a part of the community, and then she can just accept you right away.
You.
But yeah, you do have to like ask technically. That's how it works
on Facebook. You have to ask,
right?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, if we know that you're a member of Patreon, then we'll, at any level, really.
Yeah.
We're just really grateful to those Patreon members.
Yeah, and it's the Meatsmith table is the community for members and students.
That's right.
That's the closed Facebook group.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a little plug there. And we thank you so much for any little bit that you're able to donate to help these podcasts go.
Yeah.
But I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for sitting with me and talking.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I hope that you continue to have a good rest of your winter and into your spring. And we'll be in touch soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. You can receive updates on all our brand new content as it's released by signing up for our email newsletter. Free download of Brandon's thoughts on meat cookery included. Go to farmsteadmeatsmith.com and sign up on the homepage. Thanks again for listening, and keep in touch.